For Victims and Villains, my name is Josh, and today we are continuing on our Fantasia Festival coverage. And sometimes when you have big festivals, quite like Fantasia Fest, sometimes it's the little guys, the short films creators that kind of get lost in the shuffle. And so we're here to bring them back into the shuffle. The writer director that I am joined by today is Erica
Orofino.
Orofino. I'm terrible with names. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My brain doesn't want to process it that way, but she is the writer director behind the short film Dirty Bad Wrong. How are you doing
Yeah.
today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. So you are celebrating the world premiere of this short film at Fantasia Fest. Congratulations. How does it feel to have a short film premiere at such a large festival?
Yeah, it feels pretty awesome. I grew up in Montreal, so Fantasia also kind of holds a special place for me. And so yeah, I feel like I can't really think of a better festival for this short to premiere.
Well, let's jump in to talk about the short. So this tells the story of Sid, who is by trade a sex worker, accidentally loses all of her money and is trying to get a special present for her son because this is his birthday. Uh, so this film, I gotta say, it's not every day that one of the things that really impressed me about this film is it's not every day that as a journalist I come across stories that really humanize sex workers. I feel like it's typically this narrative where it's villainizing them, or there's like a yeah, villainizing I think is like the best word. How important was it to portray Sid's journey throughout the course of these, first and foremost as a mother and as a sex worker second?
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. It was really, really important to me not to villainize her for her work. It was important and also like a bit of a process to make sure that I was always kind of towing the line of like, she may be making decisions that not everybody agrees with, but that isn't about like the sex work is not really part of that. Like the sex work is just a job. That's just her job. That's what she does to support herself and to support her kid. But it's what she ends up doing towards the end of the film in order to like quickly make a bunch of money. And I don't want to spoil what it is because I think that's where the horror comes from. But she decides to do something that kind of definitely veers into something darker and more menacing in order to make the birthday party happen. And so I had to try to make sure that we weren't looking at Sid or that we were portraying sex work in a positive light or a neutral light. That it was more important for me that it's just neutral. And then you get to kind of make up your mind as to whether or not she did the right thing in the end to throw this birthday party for her kid. So yeah, it was super important for me to not portray sex work in a negative way.
Now I don't want to jump into directly to the ending, but there is this hard left turn that it takes in the last couple of moments, and I was in between screenings when I watched this, and so I was actually at a pub enjoying a beer watching this, and I was like, oh, it's over. Like, can you kind of talk about was that the original ending to kind of have Jaws hit the floor the way that it does, or had you kind of played around with a couple other horror elements that you wanted to bring into this ending?
Yeah, so I wrote the ending first. So it was so it was always meant to be that way. It was more about how do I get us there?
Interesting.
And yeah. So yeah.
That's fascinating. What was kind of the research process to kind of bring us to that ending? Because I feel like there was some level of research here, whether to go back to the whole, portraying sex work in a neutral or positive light, and then even with some of the interactions between Sid and her clientele, and then kind of even bringing back the ending, but like, can you talk about some of the research that you went into this movie?
Yeah. So I actually did, I read a lot and I spoke to sex workers, which is actually not the easiest thing to do because a lot of sex workers like to be anonymous. And so I kind of had to go through back channels, a little like friends of friends that I know who do sex work, or friends of, yeah, friends of friends. So spoke to quite a few sex workers. Read an amazing book called Modern Horror. Everybody should read that. That is by Andrea Werhun, and she is now a actor, filmmaker, but has done sex work her entire life. And I also spoke to her on the phone. So that's where that research came in. And then I'm also really fascinated with paraphilia, which is like fetishes that can become dangerous, or like fetishes that are not, oh, my dog is barking, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Fetishes that kind of like yeah, are not necessarily healthy or like socially acceptable and can cause harm. I'm not into that, but I'm interested in it. And so I did a lot of research on that as well, because I think that what happens in this film definitely is considered paraphilia.
I think the fetish aspect of this definitely is kind of brought into this very ambiguous light, to where it's like you kind of leave it up to the viewer whether or not what you're watching is okay or not, you know, societally speaking.
Yeah, sorry, I'm muting myself because my dog is barking.
It's fun.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that you know, so this is why it was so important to me to be careful with how I was portraying sex work, because it's like there's sex work in the film and then it veers into something else at the end. And so what it veers into at the end is something that is dangerous and scary, which sometimes, you know, sex work can be that way. It shouldn't, but sometimes it is. And so, but there's a very distinct line in the film. Like there's, you know that what is about to happen is not going to be, it's not okay. There's many like cues in the film that show the audience that like, this is not sex work. This is something else that's about to happen. Yeah. So it goes beyond sex work and goes into something a little more nefarious.
I don't want to say what it is because it's so hard, but we'll talk about it another before I veer into spoilers. But one of these things that I think this film does really smartly is it veers this line between kind of that mysterious line of sex work, but also this like very wholesome nature. I was very surprised by how wholesome this movie is. And the mother-son dynamic is kind of really the heartbeat of this film, and it's probably the reason that I think it's going to stay with a lot of people, that, you know, whether they catch it at Fantasia Fest or they catch it at another festival. Can you talk about the challenge of creating a story that had to balance those elements and never feel like it veered too much into one area or the other, but it walked that line very intently?
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that, first of all, because that's kind of always the goal for me. Is I'm so interested in characters and relationships, and so I think that always needs to feel like it's I guess the heart of the film, or like the meat of the film needs to be like these characters and their relationship to one another. And so because I already had like the ending of the film in mind, like I knew how I wanted it to end. It was about kind of like working backwards as to how do we get there. And it's like from A to B to C. And so I know what C is, and I know what that scene is, like the horror, scene in the film. And then it's kind of about like building out the relationship between the mother and her kid throughout the film. And I think a lot of what makes it resonate so well is like the acting. So like the two, Micahela and Jack Greig. Micahela Kurimsky plays Sid, and Jack Greig plays the kid. We would get together and sort of play games. Like, he really liked dancing, Jack. And so we would play music, and Micahela and him would kind of dance together. And he, yeah, like, you know, he's a kid and he wasn't super familiar with acting. So it really just helped to kind of play games with him and just get him like physically comfortable with Micahela. And I feel like that familiarity between them really helped us on set. It was really, I feel like a lot of the relationship that you saw was kind of very real, or as real as it could be, between two strangers, just because of how much chemistry they had just as people. So I owe it to them, I think.
That's awesome. Well, this film is, once again, it's called Dirty Bad Wrong, and it is premiering on July 29th at Fantasia Fest. It's world premiere. If you guys get a chance to check it out, go check it out. Follow it on the festival circuit as well. But where can people find you online?
Yeah, online, you can find me on Instagram or on my website, which is ericaorofino.com. And I'm sure this, or I hope this isn't the last of Dirty Bad Wrong that you'll see. It's just starting its circuit, so hope you can see it.
Well, we'll provide all those links for you guys in the show notes below, as well as the full library for every Fantasia Fest selection this year as well, and all of our and more of our Fantasia Fest coverage as well. Erica, thank you so much for your time. Click the links in the show notes below, and we'll see you guys soon.